In recent years, a unique form of social resistance has quietly spread among young people in China. There are no large-scale street protests, no loud slogans, and no mass demonstrations. Instead, this quiet resistance plays out through everyday life. Many young adults have chosen not to pursue career success at all costs, to delay or reject marriage, to forego having children, and to work only enough to meet their basic needs. For them, these choices represent a way of expressing dissatisfaction with a system they believe imposes ever-increasing pressure while offering fewer opportunities in return. What makes this phenomenon particularly noteworthy is that it has grown far beyond a small niche and has become a widely discussed topic across Chinese society. Many experts argue that this trend should not simply be dismissed as a lack of ambition or laziness. For many young people, intentionally lowering their expectations for career advancement and traditional life milestones is a conscious strategy to protect their mental well-being and avoid being consumed by relentless competition. Rather than working exhausting hours for years while still struggling to afford a home, start a family, or achieve financial security, they choose a slower pace of life, spend less, and abandon goals that were once considered the standard definition of success. A study conducted by Peking University attracted significant attention by using a broader definition of youth employment. According to the study, if individuals who had stopped looking for work or withdrawn from the labor market altogether were included, the share of young people without stable employment could reach approximately 46.5%. Although this methodology does not represent China's official unemployment rate, it highlights an important reality. A substantial portion of the younger generation has stepped away from the economic system or no longer believes that hard work will necessarily lead to meaningful rewards. The significance of that figure extends far beyond ordinary labor statistics. It suggests that many young people are not only struggling to find suitable jobs, but are also gradually losing confidence in their own future prospects. Faced with limited opportunities for upward mobility, soaring living costs, and mounting workplace pressures, many have chosen to step back rather than continue competing. This has become a form of silent protest with remarkable influence because countless individuals are independently making the same decision without any organized movement directing them. As a result, this trend has become a major concern for policymakers. If increasing numbers of young people choose not to participate actively in the labor market, the economy could face serious consequences, including lower productivity, weaker domestic consumption, and worsening demographic challenges that already exist. This is one of the reasons why discussions surrounding the movement continue to receive widespread attention across online platforms. The origins of the movement are commonly traced back to 2021, when a young man shared his personal story on social media. He described being unemployed, working only when he genuinely needed money, and maintaining an extremely minimalist lifestyle with very few material desires. What caused his post to spread rapidly was not an endorsement of laziness but the sense of peace and relief he experienced after freeing himself from the constant pressure of work. Millions of people identified with his experience and began sharing similar stories of their own. From that point forward, the concept of lying flat gradually evolved into a symbol of a new lifestyle. Those who embrace this philosophy do not necessarily abandon work altogether. Instead, they intentionally lower their expectations, reduce consumption, avoid chasing social status, and refuse to sacrifice all of their time and health for their careers. To them, the value of life is measured not only by salary or professional titles but also by balance, leisure, and mental well-being. This philosophy has also reshaped attitudes toward the workplace. Many young employees reject long hours of unpaid overtime, limit their availability outside regular working hours, and are increasingly willing to say no to tasks they consider unreasonable. They no longer view non-stop work as the hallmark of success, but instead see it as a major contributor to physical exhaustion and emotional burnout. Over time, however, some people came to believe that simply lying flat was still not enough to escape feelings of frustration and hopelessness. This gave rise to an even more radical mindset commonly known as Bailin, often translated as let it rot. while lying flat still involves doing the minimum necessary to sustain one's life. Balin reflects a much deeper rejection of society's expectations. Those who embrace this philosophy argue that when the system is fundamentally stacked against them, continuing to struggle only leads to greater disappointment and exhaustion. The term originated from basketball slang, where it implies that once a game is essentially beyond saving, continued effort is unlikely to change the outcome. Applied to society, it reflects a growing sense of disillusionment among some young people as they confront limited job opportunities, rising living expenses, unaffordable housing prices, intense competition, and uncertainty about the future. Although not every young Chinese person shares this perspective, its growing popularity highlights the profound economic and social pressures affecting an entire generation. Viewed from a broader perspective, movements such as lying flat and Balin are more than temporary internet trends. They reflect a deeper transformation in how many young people define success and happiness. Rather than continuing to pursue traditional milestones, they increasingly prioritize peace of mind, personal autonomy, and mental health. This shift in values has transformed individual lifestyle choices into a significant social phenomenon that has attracted the attention of researchers, journalists, and policymakers alike. In the past, many young people regarded buying a home, getting married, having children, and building a successful career as essential milestones of a fulfilling life. Today, however, many young Chinese see those goals as either unattainable or no longer worth pursuing. They choose not to take on large mortgages, postpone or avoid marriage and parenthood, step away from the race for promotions, and work only enough to cover their essential living expenses. From their perspective, if achieving a particular goal requires sacrificing too much time, health, and personal freedom while offering only a slim chance of success, then walking away from the race is the more rational choice. This trend is especially evident in China's labor market. In recent years, numerous surveys and reports have shown a sharp increase in the number of bachelor's and master's degree holders taking jobs as food delivery couriers, ride-hailing drivers, or other forms of manual labor. The striking reality is that most of them do not lack knowledge or skills. Rather, they no longer believe that a college degree can guarantee a stable job, a high income, or the bright future that their parents' generation once expected it to provide. Imagine someone who has spent nearly 2 decades navigating China's notoriously competitive education system. From elementary school through high school and college, they endured one high-pressure exam after another, believing that all their hard work would eventually earn them a desirable office job. Yet after reaching that goal, many choose to put on a Michelin delivery uniform instead of forcing themselves into an exhausting corporate environment. Those once expected to work in sleek office towers now spend their days riding through crowded city streets, rain or shine, delivering meals to customers. Some young people have gone even further by temporarily or permanently giving up the search for full-time employment altogether. Instead of working in an office, they stay home to care for their parents, cook meals, do laundry, clean the house, and manage household responsibilities. On Chinese social media, this phenomenon has become known as full-time children. In some families, parents even provide their adult children with a monthly allowance as a form of compensation for helping with daily household needs. A closer look reveals that the lying flat, Tang Ping, and let it rot by land movements are not expressed in just one way. Instead, they have evolved into a variety of lifestyles. At one extreme is a group commonly referred to online as the rat people. They live almost entirely disconnected from the outside world, spending most of their time inside a small room. Their day often begins in the afternoon, followed by hours lying in bed, scrolling through their phones, watching videos, or playing video games, with little interest in leaving home or socializing. This is not simply laziness, it represents a conscious refusal to participate in what they see as a meaningless social rat race. Many people mistakenly assume that this lifestyle means doing absolutely nothing. In reality, many still work, but they deliberately choose low-stress jobs with flexible schedules. They may teach online, live stream on social media platforms, create digital content, drive for ride-hailing services, deliver food, or take temporary jobs that pay immediately after each shift. Their goal is not to accumulate wealth or climb the corporate ladder. Instead, they simply want to earn enough to cover food, rent, and the basic necessities of life. For some young people, this minimalist lifestyle offers relief from the relentless pressure of conventional employment. However, for those with very low or unstable incomes, life can gradually become increasingly precarious. As a result, some make even more radical choices. They decide to live without a permanent home. Believing that homelessness is a smaller sacrifice than working endlessly just to pay rent or spend decades repaying a mortgage, many sleep in 24-hour internet cafes, train stations, public spaces, temporary shelters, or anywhere they can stay overnight at the lowest possible cost. From their perspective, owning no property is less frightening than spending the prime years of their lives trapped in debt within an unpredictable real estate market. For many of them, personal freedom is more valuable than owning an apartment financed through a 30-year mortgage. Today, China has roughly 200 million people classified as flexible workers. Officially, they are freelancers, gig workers, or temporary employees. Yet many observers believe this number also reflects millions of young people who have stepped away from the traditional career path and now exist on the margins of the formal economy. One well-known example is the group of young workers nicknamed the Sand Gods in Shenzhen. They are famous for their philosophy of work one day, rest three. Instead of signing long-term employment contracts, they take short-term manual labor jobs that pay cash the same day. Once they have earned enough money, they live as frugally as possible, eating inexpensive meals, sleeping in internet cafes or budget accommodations, and spending most of their remaining time playing video games or entertaining themselves online. To them, this lifestyle is far less stressful than working continuously for a salary that still would not allow them to buy a home or significantly improve their social status. What is particularly noteworthy is that most people who embrace this lifestyle have not lost the ability to work or become detached from reality. On the contrary, many have carefully weighed their options before making this decision. They compare rent, living expenses, wages, and opportunities for advancement, only to conclude that if full-time work still cannot provide meaningful financial security, then reducing material desires and living more simply offers a greater sense of peace. From the outside, they are often labeled as lazy, unmotivated, or unwilling to face life's challenges. However, when viewed within China's broader economic and social context, their decision reflects the deep disappointment many young people feel toward the traditional definition of success. Rather than continuing to compete in a system where they believe the chances of winning are becoming increasingly slim, they choose another path, lowering their expectations, simplifying their needs, and placing greater value on peace of mind than on pursuing goals they no longer consider realistic. Those who adopt the lying flat Tang Ping lifestyle are often misunderstood as being lazy or lacking ambition. In reality, the opposite is usually true. Most were once highly diligent students with strong academic records who placed tremendous faith in education and career advancement. They believed that if they studied hard, worked diligently, and put forth enough effort, they would eventually achieve a stable life with a home, a family, and a secure future. After years of striving, however, many gradually realized that this promise no longer held true. Consider a recent college graduate in Beijing. To earn his degree, he spent well over a decade studying tirelessly, surviving the famously grueling Gaokao examination to gain admission to a prestigious university. Yet upon graduation, instead of finding a stable career, he is confronted with fierce competition from millions of equally qualified graduates. To keep a job, he must accept long working hours stretching from morning until night, while earning just enough to cover rent, food, and other basic living expenses. Even after years of employment, his savings remain far too small to consider buying an apartment. While marriage and starting a family seem increasingly out of reach, this situation extends far beyond a handful of individuals. Every year, Chinese universities produce millions of new graduates, but job creation has failed to keep pace. The widening gap between the supply of educated workers and the number of available positions has made competition more intense than ever. In this environment, education and ability still matter, but they are no longer the only factors that determine success. What often sets one candidate apart is simply a willingness to work longer hours, endure greater pressure, and sacrifice more for the job. The intensely competitive environment helped create and spread the 996 work culture across many companies, especially in the technology and internet sectors. The term refers to a work schedule of 9 o'clock a.m. to 9 o'clock p.m., 6 days a week. Many employees spend most of their time at the office eating, resting, and even sleeping there because of overwhelming workloads. Over time, work gradually takes over their personal lives, leaving almost no distinction between working hours and personal time. For many years, young people in China were encouraged to believe that diligence and perseverance would inevitably lead to success. However, when millions of people are all willing to work relentlessly, hard work is no longer a competitive advantage, it becomes the minimum expectation. No one officially requires employees to work excessive overtime, yet pressure from co-workers and the labor market makes many feel that refusing to do so could quickly result in being replaced. What was once viewed as a sign of dedication has quietly become an unwritten standard that nearly everyone is expected to follow. This reality has led many young people to ask themselves a troubling question. If working harder and putting in more effort still doesn't improve their lives, what is the point of continuing the race? They once believed that hard work would allow them to achieve a better quality of life. Instead, they have watched housing prices continue to soar, living expenses rise steadily, and wages increase only marginally. As the gap between expectations and reality continues to widen, many have become exhausted and increasingly disillusioned. Many observers argue that the benefits of China's rapid economic growth over the past several decades have not been distributed equally across society. According to widely cited statistics, by the late 1970s, the bottom half of the population by income received roughly 27% of the nation's total income. Today, that share has fallen substantially, reflecting a growing trend of income inequality. Meanwhile, those at the top of the income ladder now control an increasingly large share of the country's wealth and assets. At the same time, housing prices in many major cities have risen far faster than wages. Countless workers spend years on the job without ever being able to afford a home of their own. As economic growth has slowed, some companies have responded by cutting jobs or reducing salaries, knowing they can easily recruit replacements from China's large labor pool. As a result, feelings of job insecurity have become increasingly widespread, particularly among young people entering the workforce. For many supporters of the lying flat Tang Ping movement, these conditions illustrate a development model in which hard work no longer guarantees fair rewards. As the returns on labor continue to shrink while the costs of pursuing success keep rising, many have chosen to lower their ambitions, reduce consumption, and opt out of the intense competition they believe they are unlikely to win. For them, this is more than a personal lifestyle choice, it is also a way of expressing disappointment with the pressures of modern society. In many other countries, people dissatisfied with economic conditions or social policies can express their concerns through protests, political activism, or the ballot box. In China, however, opportunities for openly expressing such views are considerably more limited. As a result, instead of taking to the streets, some young people have chosen a quieter form of resistance, withdrawing from the race for success, lowering their career expectations, and embracing a minimalist lifestyle as a way of rejecting the pressures they faced in the past. People in many countries, especially young adults, could voice their dissatisfaction through elections, peaceful demonstrations, or public protests. In China, however, those avenues are significantly more restricted. Content critical of government authorities is often subject to strict censorship, while public demonstrations rarely last long before being dispersed by law enforcement. Consequently, for many young people, openly confronting the system is simply not seen as a realistic option. Under these circumstances, the lying flat movement gradually emerged as a form of passive yet highly symbolic resistance. Rather than marching in the streets or chanting slogans, participants choose to step away from the relentless race for achievement. They are no longer willing to devote all of their time and energy to a system they believe no longer offers equal opportunities. Their message is straightforward. If society's fundamental problems remain unresolved, they will no longer play by the old rules. It is a form of nonviolent protest, yet its influence has been significant enough to attract nationwide attention. Over time, more and more people have embraced this lifestyle. From ordinary young adults to content creators, bloggers, and social media influencers, many have helped turn lying flat into a widely discussed topic. As a result, the movement has evolved from a niche phenomenon into a symbol of the frustration and loss of confidence felt by many young people facing mounting academic pressure, demanding careers, and an ever-rising cost of living for the Chinese government. This is not simply another internet trend, it is viewed as a serious challenge. An economy seeking to sustain rapid growth depends on a young workforce that is energetic, ambitious, and willing to work long hours to achieve national development goals. The lying flat movement, by contrast, encourages a minimalist lifestyle, reduced ambition, and less participation in the competitive rat race. As a result, it is widely seen as running counter to the direction the government hopes to promote. For this reason, a variety of measures have been introduced to limit the movement's influence. On social media platforms, keywords such as lying flat, Tang Ping, let it rot Bailan, and similar phrases have been blocked or removed from search results. Numerous articles, videos, and online discussions about the movement have been taken down or had their visibility significantly reduced. Online forums and discussion groups where users shared ideas about this lifestyle have likewise disappeared following successive rounds of censorship. However, tighter government control did not prove completely effective. Internet users quickly found new ways to continue spreading the same message. They adopted alternative words, coded language, creative spellings, symbols, and metaphors to bypass censorship systems. Although the terminology changed, the core spirit of the movement continued to spread, demonstrating that it is far from easy to completely suppress a social trend in the online world. Alongside these censorship measures, state-controlled media consistently published articles criticizing the movement. Many reports portrayed it as a sign of irresponsibility that weakened the work ethic and undermined the country's development. Some television commentators and newspaper editorials argued that even if young people felt overwhelmed or discouraged, they should continue striving instead of giving up. The Communist Youth League of China also released statements emphasizing that Chinese youth should never choose to lie flat and urged the younger generation to maintain their ambition and determination. Ironically, this strong official response led many observers to believe that the authorities recognized the movement's genuine influence. If it had been nothing more than a short-lived trend with little real impact, there would have been no need for such extensive censorship, propaganda campaigns, and public opinion guidance. The persistent efforts to limit the movement's spread suggest that officials were concerned that if more young people abandoned career ambitions, postponed marriage, chose not to have children, and reduce their spending, the long-term consequences could affect both the economy and the country's demographic structure. Opposition did not come only from the government. Many people from older generations, particularly baby boomers and Generation X, also expressed strong disapproval. In their view, lying flat represents laziness, a lack of determination, and an unwillingness to accept responsibility. They argue that today's young people no longer possess the same work ethic, willingness to sacrifice for their careers, or drive to succeed that characterized previous generations. From their perspective, success has always been achieved through hard work and perseverance, making the decision to step away from the competition difficult to accept. Young people, however, see the issue from an entirely different perspective. They point out that previous generations came of age during a period of rapid economic growth, abundant job opportunities, and significantly lower costs for housing, education, and raising children. Back then, hard work often produced meaningful rewards, stable employment, the ability to buy a home, steadily rising incomes, and clear opportunities for career advancement. Today's young adults, by contrast, face an intensely competitive job market, soaring housing prices, slow wage growth, and ever-increasing living expenses. Under these circumstances, many believe that no matter how hard they work, they may never achieve the standard of living that earlier generations enjoyed. These dramatically different economic conditions, social environments, and life expectations have created a substantial generational divide. What older generations interpret as a lack of effort, many young people see as a rational response to a system where they believe the rewards no longer justify the sacrifices. As a result, the lying flat movement is more than just a lifestyle trend. It reflects a deeper debate about social fairness, equal opportunity, and the future prospects of an entire generation in modern China. There was a time when getting married, owning a home, and raising children were considered realistic goals for the vast majority of young adults. By studying hard, working diligently, and saving consistently, they could gradually build a stable and secure life. Today, however, the social landscape has changed dramatically. Goals that were once viewed as ordinary milestones have become overwhelming burdens for many young Chinese. In addition to dealing with demanding work schedules and fierce competition, many also shoulder the pressures created by family structures shaped after decades of the one-child policy. As only children reach adulthood, they often become responsible for supporting not only their two parents but also all four grandparents. This means that the financial, medical, and caregiving responsibilities of an entire extended family can fall on a single individual, even as the cost of living continues to rise. In many major cities, housing prices have climbed so high that purchasing an apartment may require the equivalent of 40 to 50 years of an average worker's income. Under such circumstances, marriage is no longer simply the beginning of a family, and having children is no longer viewed solely as a source of joy. For many young adults, these decisions represent financial commitments that can last for decades and may require sacrificing both personal freedom and quality of life. Instead of seeing a future filled with hope, they often see mounting debt, endless responsibilities, and relentless pressure. As a result, many choose to step away from the race rather than continue pursuing standards they believe are no longer attainable. Lying flat is not simply about laziness or a lack of ambition. For many young people, it is a response to the feeling of helplessness that arises when hard work no longer seems to produce meaningful rewards. They choose a simpler lifestyle, lower their expectations, and reject goals that society has long treated as mandatory. Older generations and policymakers may continue urging young people to work harder, stop lying flat, and contribute more to society. Yet such appeals are unlikely to bring about meaningful change as long as the underlying causes remain unresolved. Authorities may be able to remove online posts or censor keywords associated with the movement, but they cannot erase the exhaustion, disillusionment, and frustration that have taken root in the minds of an entire generation. When working hard no longer offers a realistic path to buying a home, building a family, or achieving a better life, choosing not to participate in that relentless competition becomes, for many, a reasonable decision. Perhaps the more important question is no longer why so many young people in China no longer wish to keep up with society's relentless pace, but rather this: if you were living under the same circumstances, carrying the same pressures and responsibilities, would you make a different choice? If you found this video informative and thought-provoking, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Every bit of your support motivates us to continue creating more high-quality content. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again in the next video.